Good morning. This is Sharon from House of Prayer, and we're going to talk about some things are only unbelievable when you don't believe in God. There are times we narrow our minds about certain events in our lives, and we expect God's intervention from specific places and through certain dimensions. However, each time we narrow our minds, we tend to limit the power of God in our lives. We limit our faith. We may be limited as humans, but God is unlimited in His ways. He may choose the least expected means to showcase the greatness of His power. He's able to see things we can't possibly see. We need to look at our situation through the eyes of faith, not of doubt. When all hope is lost, God will make a way. This is why the Bible tells us in Proverbs chapter 3, 5, and 6, trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths. We must not lean on our own understanding because it's not enough. We have a limited view of what can be done, and this will cause us to put limits on God. But God has no limits. He is an all-seeing, all-knowing, and all-powerful God. Nothing is too hard for Him. Nothing is too out of reach. We need to have faith and stop putting our limitations on God. Sometimes in life, things just don't make sense. We go through things we just don't understand or expect. But thank God for Romans chapter 8, verse 28. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to His purpose. The epitome of trusting God is believing He is who He says He is. If you believe who He says He is in the Bible, you know He is well able to intervene in your situation. In fact, God uses the smallest matters in the world to confuse people. He runs the smallest weapons to defeat the mighty so we can reverence Him. I think He's talking about the slingshot there for David. That is the reason the scripture saying in 1 Corinthians 1:27, but God has chosen the foolish things in this world to put to shame the wise, and God has chosen the weak things of this world to put to shame the things which are mighty. God is so mysterious in His ways. His paths are past finding out. God is in every situation, whether big or small. 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 11 and 12. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great strong wind rent the mountains, and broken in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. When God chose to speak after the prophet Elijah, who was running from Jezebel, He caused a boisterous wind to blow. There was a whirlwind fire, an earthquake, but God was not in any of them. But there came a small still voice, and there was God. Sometimes we think God will come through great shouts and trembling, but he may choose to showcase himself even in the quietest silence. There is no situation it is too small for God to intervene in, and there is no medium through which the power of God cannot flow. In 2 Kings chapter 6, verses 1 through 7, interesting shows how a construction site turned into a miracle scene. The most amazing miracle could be experienced anywhere and at any time, provided we have God on our side. The power of God is not more in certain places than others. God is as powerful as he is in any other place. His power does not increase or reduce with time or place. The sons of the prophet had pleaded with Elijah to go with him to fell trees for the construction of a more spacious room, and he went with them. 2 Kings chapter 6, 5 and 7. But as no one was felling a beam, the axe head fell into the water. And he cried and said, Alas, master, for it was borrowed. And the man of God said, Where fell it? And he showed him the place. And he cut down a stick and cast into thither, and the iron did swim. Therefore he said, Take it up to thee. And he put out his hand and took it. As the sons of the prophet were cutting down a tree, the axe head fell into the river Jordan. Unfortunately, they had borrowed it. The axe head sank deep into the river and seemed irrecoverable. But the sons of the prophet Elijah, when you are in a terrible situation, who do you normally run to? Some of us would rather talk to people who cannot offer us any help than to confide in the people of the Lord. Unfortunately, many believers do relate their problems with their unbelieving neighbors instead of crying out to the servants of God. While there are some would rather suffer in silence than to cry out for help. When you honor God in the lives of his servants, you will propel your miracle to be birthed. Prophet Elijah asked where the axe head fell, and they showed him. He simply cut down the stick and cast it at the spot, and miraculously the axe head floated. God is awesome. He specializes in seemingly impossible situations. How can an iron float on water? There is surely no scientific explanation for that. The spiritual law of substitution came into play here. Naturally, a stick can float on water. The stick that Prophet Elijah cast into the water substituted for the sunken axe head. The stick sunk. The axe head floated. The prophet ordered them to reach out for the axe head, and they picked it up. The recovery of the axe head by miracle shows that God is concerned about the smallest materialism, our lives. If God could cause a miracle to happen that brought about the recovery of the axe head, which had sunk into the river, how much more will he cause a miracle to happen in your life? If God is so passionate about an inanimate object, how much more passionate is He about us, who are made in His image and likeness? God cares about everything in our lives. He can go a long way to meet our needs. The miraculous acts of God are fearful. He can use anything to show forth His power and glory, no matter how small a thing is. God can create a miracle out of it and make a weapon of war out of it. Isn't it amazing that God chose to make a man in His image? He didn't use the most valuable gem in the world. He rather used dust and clay to fashion man. What an amazing God. When God was to demonstrate His power against the Egyptians, used ridiculous objects such as frogs, lice, hail, locusts, darkness, anything became a weapon of war in the hands of God. When He decides to showcase the excellency of His power, signs and wonders are commonplace. When a person is in the ambience of God, Jesus wanted to feed 5,000 people in Matthew 14:13 through 21, and all He had was 5 loaves and 2 fishes. With this little supply, Christ confidently ordered all the people to take their seats. Not long after He multiplied the meal, amazingly, 12 baskets full of leftovers were gathered from 5 loaves and 2 small fishes. Psalms 37, verses 3 through 6. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and feed on this faithfulness. Delight yourself also in the Lord, and He shall give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in Him, and He shall bring it to pass. He shall bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday.